with Reform UK's London Assembly member Alex Wilson, who joins us right now. Very good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Afternoon. Lots to talk about with you. Where do you stand? Should Angela Rayner stay or should she go?
I think she's got to go. I mean, the more details come out about this story and the details of it, the murkier it gets, and the more that it seems things have been tried to be hidden, and the more comes out, it doesn't put her in a very positive light at all, especially given that her remit as Secretary of State for Housing and Local Government, ownership of property is a big part of that brief. And
do you think? And indeed, her department brought in this doubling of council tax. I keep saying council doubling. Well, there's also an increase for council tax for second home buyers, second homeowners, but for second home buyers, this increase in stamp duty. So basically, you pay. I mean, on a property of her size, you pay 10% instead of 5% on most of the value of that property. You'd think that. I mean, she claims she did seek legal advice on this. Do you think she asked the right person? Because we're told this morning, sources are saying she spoke to 3 different people. We don't know if that was, a cleaner, woman at the bus stop and a bloke down the pub, or if it was 3 legal and tax specialists. Can you hear me? Alex, can you hear me? Alex, hello.
And we don't know if they all gave her the same advice and which one she picked and chose to go with.
Yeah, indeed. Sorry, we lost you. We lost you for a second there, Alex. But this is the thing. So she sought this advice from a KC, we understand, a top tax specialist who said, you didn't pay the right tax. HMRC will still very likely fine her. I didn't know governor isn't actually an excuse with the tax man. But does that mean that she's done something so wrong that she should be forced from office?
Well, earlier in the week, the line seemed to be that she hadn't done anything wrong. Then there was an admission that she had, and then the details of how part of this had been funded through the sale of the share in her previous property to the trust that's there to look after the interests of her child. And look, a lot of people have complicated lives and complicated tax arrangements as a result of that. But that is not an excuse for not making sure you're doing the right thing, particularly if you are in a position of power, of authority that's directly relevant to housing as an issue. So you've got to be wiser than white, and especially when you have spent so much of your career, her career, going after other people who have been doing similar things. The vitriol that she threw at the likes of Nadhim Zahawi when he had question marks over his tax arrangements, the Labour position in opposition, the default response to any kind of whiff of scandal was resign. And if you are going to play that game in opposition, you have to play by the same rules when you yourself are in government. So I think the big thing, and the thing why so many people are angry, and listen to various Vox Pops and people calling in on this channel and on others, the hypocrisy. That's what gets you. If you want to be preaching and taking the moral high ground, you've absolutely got to play by that rules yourself.
And this is the thing, I think, for a lot of people, and certainly that's the biggest issue for me, is the hypocrisy over this. And again, you would think, either if you're going to really gun for people like Nadhim Zahawi and others, and Rishi Sunak's wife being a non-dom, and I absolutely gun for both of them on their tax arrangements, that they were both outrageous, that if you're going to gun for those people, you need to make sure that you are whiter than white yourself, so you can't face the same criticism. But also, crucially, wouldn't you want to, if you're someone who says you're all about, helping the working class and saying how important it is that everyone pays their fair share of tax, wouldn't you want to make sure you've absolutely paid your fair share of tax?
Yeah, completely. I mean, this is a government that is raising the overall levels of tax, the burden on our economy to the highest level it's ever been, or certainly since the war. And it's just not acceptable for, if you believe that people should be paying more tax and you want to hamper the economy by doing that, then of course you yourself have got to make your own fair contribution. Yep. And that's, again, the hypocrisy. So there's 2 levels of hypocrisy here. One in her personal affairs and the way that she's held others to account in her earlier in her career. But secondly, this government is a tax-raising government. It wants to spend money on all sorts of things that we really can't afford. But you've got to make your own contribution to that if that's the policy you're driving. What
about, just finally on this issue, what do you make of the people who the Prime Minister mentioned in PMQs, he was standing by, he was proud to have her as his deputy. I mean, I don't think he's always thought that. He's tried to get rid of her a few times and get rid of her responsibilities. But I think he was proud, and she's a working class woman. Lots of her allies, people speaking up for her, saying, even a union boss, Paul Novak, has said, she's been under attack because she's a working class woman. This is sexism, this is classism, and that's why they've gunned for her. What do you say to that?
No, she's under attack because she's a hypocrite, pure and simple. And for the likes of Starmer and Rachel Reeves to come out to say that they've got full confidence in her, well, it sounds very much like me to how you have in football when a manager's about to get the chop, the chairman comes out and says, the manager's got the full confidence of the board, and then by the end of the week they're gone. So I suspect she won't last. Certainly, if there's any sense of fair play and justice, she won't last.
Well, that's an interesting proviso, but there we are. Let me talk to you just very briefly about Robert Jenrick. He's Shadow Justice Secretary. He was a leadership rival for Kemi Badenoch last year for the Tory leadership. He has done an interview in which he said he very much supports tough migration crackdown. He supports the deportations that Nigel Farage has talked about, but he also said he would support laws designed to ensure more people leave the UK than enter, so having a net emigration rather than immigration policy. How much do you welcome Robert Jenrick's support for reform, and is this basically a prelude to him, jumping ship?
I'd be very surprised if he did jump ship. I would welcome him, to be honest. I think he does have a lot of good things to say, particularly since being turfed out of government. But it does also feel a bit kind of Johnny-come-lately. Nigel's been talking about these issues for a great many years. Was the first to go out and film the small boats coming across the channel 2 or 3 years ago when nobody else was talking about it.
True.
I think the Conservative Party have got themselves in a terrible state by their record in office. If Robert Jenrick is prepared to completely renounce or denounce his own party's record in office, then of course that's to be welcomed. But fundamentally, I think he's saying this because he, like all the Conservatives, are scared. They're scared of reform. We're gathering for our conference tomorrow and Saturday. We're going to showcase what we're all about. And quite frankly, if people want to leave the Tories and join us, that's fine, but they need to hurry up. They need to do it. They need to have something positive to bring to the table and not just doing it to save their own skins.
Very interesting. Well, Nigel Farage is hot-footing it back from Washington, where he's been speaking to a committee there, the House Judiciary Committee, about regulation of online expression. And he's been telling them about how in Britain and in Europe, how in an evidence session, how much that has been infringed, but also talking about Lucy Connolly, of course, imprisoned for a tweet she wrote in about the post of the Southport attack, but also about the arrest only this week of the Irish comedy writer Graham Linehan. He was arrested by 5 armed police officers at Heathrow over 3 tweets he'd written about trans activists. How concerned are you at reform about free speech in this country? Do you think that we have a long and proud history and still have free speech in this country, as Keir Starmer keeps insisting to us? And what are you going to do about it?
No, we do have a long and proud history of supporting free speech as a country, and it's something that we should be very, very proud of. But it is absolutely under threat, and the Online Safety Act is part of that. But we look at the way that cancel culture, something which has largely been imported from the States, certain views, robust views on things like trans and religions and things like that, get criticised, get cancelled, and it's simply not acceptable. I think what Nigel has done has really made a lot of noise about this, put it front and centre of people's minds over the last couple of days. And I think it's absolutely right to do so, because nobody else is really standing up for the right of people to say things that sometimes, they might be unsavoury, they might be unhelpful, they might be wrong. But if we have a culture in which we encourage free expression and debate of views, if that's how we should run our system, it shouldn't be putting in frameworks and legislation to clamp down on people's ability to say what they think. And as far as sending 5 armed police officers to arrest someone as they're arriving at an airport, we're in London. We have a knife crime epidemic. We have the
sorry, the phone line went a bit funny. We have it. Sorry, you were saying in London we have a knife crime epidemic, which we absolutely
we have
do.
Knife crime epidemic. We have mobile phone theft epidemic. Those are the things that the police should be dealing with, not a few hurty words on Twitter.
What do you make of the police, the chief for Metropolitan Police, that's Sir Mark Rowley? He says, look, the police are in an impossible position. They're between a rock and a hard place, and it's politicians who need to change the law. Are they in an impossible position on this? Don't they get to choose? I mean, you get to hold to account in the London Assembly the Police and Crime Commissioner, also the London Mayor, Sir Sadiq Khan, on these sort of issues. Don't they get to choose their priorities?
Well, clearly, I think the law and changing the law is the reserve of politicians, and we all need to look at how we do that. But not every crime gets investigated. Not every crime gets results in an arrest. Or I mean, look, burglary. Only 2% of burglaries in outer London ultimately result in a charge or a court summons. So clearly there is prioritisation goes on in the Met. They have limited resources. My argument is they should be prioritising those resources on crimes where there are genuine victims, whether those are crimes of violence or crimes of theft, robbery, burglary. Those are the things we need to be tackling, not saying a few words on.
Great. Alex Wilson, the line just about survived. Alex Wilson, who's a Reform UK London Assembly member. Thank you very much for joining us. Apologies, everyone, for the quality of that line, but I wanted to hear what you had to say. Interesting, Philip Ingram. It's interesting calling Robert Jenrick and Johnny come lately. I thought it was interesting.
Well, it is, but I think as reform starts to grow in the polls, we're going to see a lot of Tory ex-ministers and ex-MPs who can see themselves as a career in politics in the future, jumping ship into reform. And actually, reform need people with experience in government. If reform is going to,
I think there needs to be a sort of a point at which, no, you can't just hang around and wait. You either agree with what they're doing or you don't agree with what they're doing. I think also voters will take a very dim view of that. Just say breaking news regarding Angela Rayner. Sir Keir Starmer has condemned, he says, in the strongest possible terms, I condemn in the strongest possible terms the vandalism at Angela Rayner's seaside flat in Hove. Downing Street said, whatever scrutiny our parliamentarians may face, it is appalling that their private homes should be targeted in this way. 100% agree with the Prime Minister on that. I'm sure you do. This is a criminal act of vandalism. Very intimidating as well. People don't go anywhere near people's homes. If you want to protest, hold up that banner outside, Downing Street or outside Parliament. You don't intimidate, don't send abuse. You can tweet her and say, I think you're entitled to do that in the public domain. But don't go to people's homes. Do not go anywhere near people. Don't commit criminal vandalism.
But again, I think some of the language that she has used in the past,
scum,
she's bringing this on herself. And everyone talks about Zahari and the tax issues there and are criticising that.
Nadeem Zahari.
Yeah, they forget about the criticism that she gave out in, I think it was in April 2018 on Jeremy Hunt. For avoiding £100,000 worth of stamp duty tax by buying multiple apartments in one go, and she was very critical of that and calling for his. She's in the same bracket.
Exactly. And again, I don't have a problem with her buying property and
none whatsoever.
I've got no issue with any of this. And I mean, when everyone's talking about this property empire, I'm on air going, she's not got a property empire, she bought a home. I just don't understand why, if you're a mother of teenagers, if she's brought it up in Manchester and you work you've got a constituency in Manchester you should spend some time in, and you've got a Ashton-under-Lyme, you've got a job in London as Deputy Prime Minister. I'm not entirely sure when you've got the time to be, I don't know, in a canoe vaping.
That's her personal
decision. It's entirely her personal decision. But I, as a mum, I don't know. I've got some question marks. But anyway,